Setbacks are temporary, but comebacks, they are legendary. Welcome back to the PSI Effect, where we pause, shift, and ignite purpose that speaks louder than your past. This is Neug, and together with Franky, we're your hosts in this space, and your comeback starts now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the PSI Effect Podcast. We are glad you're here. I am here together with the one and only Franky in this space.
Yeah. What's going on,
How you doing,
Nooch?
Franky?
Good, sir.
All right. So we have some good conversation for you today. Looking forward to it. And we try to bring you engaging conversation every time we get together. But before we jump into that, I want to invite our seasoned audience, as well as those newcomers, to jump on into your social spaces where you're watching this episode and go ahead and like and subscribe. All of those wonderful things that you can do with social media and help the algorithm push to folks who are looking for something new and different and want to join this space and get into some really cool conversation. Or at least I think it's cool conversation. It's always a cool conversation when I'm sitting here with Frankie.
Faux show.
I'm a little biased when it comes to that. But before we jump in, Frankie, sir, talk to me. What's going on?
Nooch, it's been an eventful week this week. Things got off to a faster than expected start. You know, I had the day off on Monday at the top of the week, and then it was a little bit unexpected. You know, I had a appointment for my eye. The last time I was at my optometrist, in the thorough job that she always does, found a hole in my retina, and I was like, "Oh, really?" You know, wasn't impacting my vision or anything like that. So that was news to me, and I was like, "Okay, well, what do we do?" And so she said I needed to see a retinal specialist. So I went to the retina specialist on Monday, just thinking that they were going to take a look and confirm and then talk about next steps. So I get in there and the doctor is, examining my eyes. Like, "Oh yeah, I see that hole." But then as I look here to the edge, you also have a tear in your retina and there's some fluid in there too. And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, here we go." I hit 50 and the wheels start falling off. What the heck is going on? So I was like, "All right, well, what do we do?" It's like, "Well, we want to fix it. We use a laser to fix it. And since we already have your eyes dilated and you're here, we can do it right now." So I was not expecting that, to get in here and get in there and have my eyeball lasered to fix the problem. But she was able to do it in about 10 minutes. It was not pleasant because, man, I could feel that laser every time it would pulse. I could feel it hit the back of my eye. I was holding on for dear life, but I didn't cry. Well, actually, I did cry because my eye was watering like a champ, but I didn't whimper. Maybe that's a better way to say it. I didn't whimper.
That's just scary talking about having your eye under a laser. And I know that this happens all the time. I know that the optometrists, ophthalmologists, and all of those folks are very trained in what they do. But just to think that have a laser in your eye, and then to say that, well, it only took 10 minutes. Like, what?
Yeah, I mean, my doctor, she was amazing. And she was able to get it done quickly. And it was like, "All right, yeah, here's a tissue, wipe the tears. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Come on back, drive on home." So because I was by myself, but I was sitting there, I was like, "Man, this is really a pain in the eye," quite literally. And but
Well, shout out to her for putting your eye back together.
Right. So I was sitting here,
Yeah.
man, I got to sit here and literally get my eye burned out, uh, figuratively getting my eye burnt out. But at the end of the day, my vision was not negatively impacted. And I've, got an extended warranty, I would say, on my eye. I don't have to worry about retinal detachments as much as as I age. But yeah, that was a little bit more adventure than I was seeking to start off the week. That's for sure. But other than that, I'm good.
Hey, well, the extended warranty, now you don't have to worry about those wheels falling off anytime soon.
Well, I mean, when you get the warranty on the wheels, the drivetrain is what goes next. So I'm just hoping I can stay upright, man. I'm just fighting to stay upright.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you in this space and glad that you can see.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So, I think we're going to pivot. Normally, Frankie and I have a topic that we're going to record. And I think we're going to pivot on this episode. I think we're going to call this one the Get To episode. And so we're pivoting in. I was going to say live, but really isn't live. But we're pivoting in this space at the moment. Frankie didn't know that we were going to head in this direction,
Mm.
but Frankie is a seasoned professional, and so pivoting is something that that he can do well. So
News. I was about to hit you with that Gary Coleman from Different Strokes. If our listeners are old enough to know about it, what you talking about, Willis?
yeah, what you talking about, Willis?
We're not doing the episode that we talked about.
No, we're not doing the episode we talked about. So we're talking about today. We're talking about Get To, and you mentioned this in one of our previous episodes, and I believe it was back during the Thanksgiving Day episode when you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, your newborn son who ended up in the NICU, and how you pushed through that and some of the things that you did. And one of the things that you mentioned was, being a little concerned and frustrated, I guess, about having to go in, and how are you going to make it through watching your son in the condition that he was in. And then you came around and said that you get to go in and see and hold your son. And
That's right.
um and so I was reminded of that because it seems lately, certainly in the last couple 3 weeks or so, I have heard a lot of complaining from folks, right, about different things, variety of things. And it just made me think about how grateful that I am that I get to do certain things. And so that's really what prompted this conversation today. So just to give you a little bit more, I think that we're in a place that there's so much happening in the world right now. By the
Absolutely.
time this episode airs, um there's we got wars going on. We got all kinds of things going on in the political structure of our country. um we have um just a lot, right? Just a lot of unprecedented things that are going on on that front. And I know that people in their everyday lives have a lot that they're dealing with, right? So um but when I hear people complain about little things, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure I'm guilty. If I take stock of my own conversations day in and day out, I am not outside of the folks that I'm talking to or talking about. Um, and I think it's going to be a good exercise for me to consider that, tomorrow and the next day. However, when I think about, I had a conversation with someone about a week or so ago, and I was talking about the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the spring here, the trees bloom. They have these little, or these particular trees anyway, have these little white flowers on them, and before they drop off, and then the leaves come and all that. I don't know what kind of trees they are, but they were beautiful that morning. And it was a nice day. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but the sky was blue, and you could tell the sun was coming. And I had just mentioned this in the conversation about how beautiful that those trees were. I mean, I don't know, maybe I was just in a mood of nature and a grateful mood, which I try to be in all the time. And I had said that to this person, and um, you know, they recognized that the trees were beautiful, but then they said, "But I just worry about all the people who have allergies." And I was like, "Wow, here's this moment that you get to take in, just the wonders of God's work, right? Just a beautiful morning to be able to just take that in and have some gratitude for the moment, for the day." And that's what I got back. And there's been some other things through the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to have a conversation, Frankie, with you and the audience about just being grateful for the things that we get to do,
Mm-hmm.
that we truly get to do, right? Like other people, some other folks don't get to do. I think about, I was mentioning, wars. I mean, people are losing their homes. I mean, their homes are getting bombed. And so, we're not there. I'm not saying that we don't have problems, but we're not there. And so
Right.
I think that whatever situation that you're in, you can definitely identify with the fact that there's someone somewhere who is worse off, right? Who's in a very difficult, an untenable situation, right? Lives are being changed forever, right?
Lives are being
The
lost.
lives are being lost, absolutely. And so, that's really kind of the preface for this whole conversation of you get to.
Yeah, and Nuge, it sounds like what you're circling around here is the shift part of our PSI framework and really needing a shift in perspective because when it's easy because I fall into this trap a lot myself. We get tunnel vision. We get tunnel vision of the immediate surroundings. At least I'll just speak for me. I'll get tunnel vision of my immediate surroundings. I'm so caught up in the immediate, in the now, that sometimes it's almost like I have blinders on and it distorts my perspective of what's going on in the broader spaces. And kind of like we talked about, comparison and what our standards are in previous episodes. Again, it's what are we making the comparison to when we're starting to feel that negativity sort of bubbling out of us.
Yeah, and I think it's really unconscious. Very often, it bubbles out, as you say, and I don't think we realize it sometimes. I think it just surfaces, and it just comes out. And if we don't have the presence of mind at the moment to put that in check, or if we don't have someone around us to uh, to check us on it, then it just runs away. It's like it's like sitting there thinking about something. You're sitting alone and you have some thoughts, and one thought leads to another thought, and you just end up down that rabbit hole. And I think that kind of behavior, when you are thinking about your current situation and how difficult some things may be or how challenging some things may be, you just don't think about the the positive aspects of where you are. You're just thinking about the moment and the frustration that you may be feeling in the moment.
Man, this really resonates, especially with some of the conversations I've had to have with my two sons, uh, relative to the sporting world, dealing with wins and losses, right? Um, in that sporting world, um, you learn a lot more from a loss than you do from a win. Winning feels great. Winning
It
is awesome.
does.
It feels fantastic. It is a feeling you will chase for the rest of your life. However, the learning happens in the loss, right? You learn more. The loss is more impactful. And I think some of that may be true for us outside of the sporting world as well. The things that we interpret and perceive as loss or less than or not having or not right, those things have a heftier gravity in terms of shaping our persona. And if we're not careful, like you said, it's a easy spiral downward into this place that it's hard to recover from. I kind of envision it like, out in space, you have a black hole, and if you go past the event horizon, there's no coming back. Like once you cross this point, the black hole's got you, and you're not coming back. And I think our mindset can be similar if we let negativity reign supreme.
Absolutely. You said it. Let negativity reign supreme. You know, we can just let that take over, and it just
Hmm.
becomes who we are, whether it's for a period of time, or a period of a long time. But it can just become who we are. That aspect of who we are. Quite honestly, I think if we hold a mirror up and look in the mirror, if we can recognize that it's not really what we want for ourselves or what we would desire for ourselves. Um, and I think that we can get to a point where it's just um, it's such an unconscious act that we have that we don't even it's part of our personality, and we don't think that there's anything wrong even if somebody brings it up to us, right? Because we don't think we're that way, because we haven't had that introspection in that area
Hmm.
uh, of our thinking. right? And so it can be very difficult time for a lot of people. And I would hope that, the folks that are listening, you and I have some people in our lives that can help us, come back from that. Because it's really not, um, it doesn't serve us well to have that type of negativity in our life and just spew negativity all the time. I mean, it's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for those around us. And it honestly, like I said, if we hold the mirror up and we really have that moment of introspection, I don't think that is who we really want to be.
Yeah, I would agree with you wholeheartedly there. And for the you talked about it just spewing out, this negativity just spewing out. For the Bible readers out there, there's a verse that says the mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. So if we're surrounded by negativity and all we're having in our intake is negativity, it's a logical progression to think that all that's coming into us is going to come out in some way, shape, or form. So it almost sounds like we're suggesting that people have a more curated approach to what they're intaking. Like, if maybe not watch the news, or not be on social media a certain time. I don't know. It just seems like the reality. Let's be honest, Nuge. The reality around us right now is pretty negative. Yes, there are so many things that we can be grateful for and that we're blessed to have, but there is a ton of negativity around us right now.
You are 100% right. And I want to make sure that, the audience knows that I understand that there are life challenges. There are, just in your everyday world, things that happen at work, things that happen at home, heck, things that happen on your way to work and your way home. There's just all kinds of things that can happen. As you point out, what's going on in the news, what's going on in the world, what's going on in the country, just compounds those feelings, especially when some of those things affect our financial situation, and other things. And so I guess for me, I'm hoping that we can get a point across that when you recognize, or if someone helps you recognize that you are in that uh, negative spiral of complaint and woe is me and everything is wrong, and all what if this scenario, what if that scenario, that really just puts a lot of pressure on you, puts a lot of worry, anxiety on you, that really doesn't help you. Is that we have a choice in those situations, and it's not easy to recognize. It's not easy to get to that point, but you have a choice. You have that get to choice, right? I get to do. I get to have. I get to be. I get to. I mean, there any number of avenues, right?
Sure.
And things that you can be thankful and grateful for, despite what is happening in the world around you. And so, I think about, like I mentioned before, we were talking about, the wars and people are losing their homes, and um, but you know what? I get to come home. I have a home. I get to come home. I get to sleep in a bed tonight. And there are those who don't, regardless of whether it's because of what's happening in the world with war and such. I mean, there are people here in our own country who don't get to have a warm bed at night. And so to lose track of those things, I think, does us a disservice. And I think it does those around us a disservice, because that type of negative outlook is contagious. It's contagious, right? Just like you were saying that, because of everything that's happening in the world, it affects us. And so if you are in a room of, five or six people that you're working with, and all you're doing is speaking negativity, then, I think that that's contagious, and it takes a very strong individual to walk away from that and turn it around. So I just want to invite the audience to kind of take stock of some of the things that you say, and recognize that you get to do a whole lot more than what you get not to do.
Hmm. I think some folks might argue with you on that, Nuge. I think it's important for us to make the distinction too, is that, you made the comparison of, people, there's this stuff going on all over the globe. There's these hardships going on, right next door in our own country, but you get to go home, you get to go to sleep. I want to make sure our audience understands that we're not saying that to diminish the importance of those things that are, to say, oh, well, it's not important that somebody's losing their home. It's not important that somebody doesn't have food because I've got mine. I want to make sure that people don't misconstrue what we're trying to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want that to be misconstrued because that's not what I'm saying. I just, I really want people to think about, yeah, I'm having this problem today. It's a real struggle for me, uh, but it's something that I can overcome. And yeah, it might be the hill uh, might be a hard hill to climb, but considering where you are and some of the resources that you may have that others don't have, there's a good chance that you can climb that mountain. Not saying it won't be painful, not saying that your muscles won't ache when you get to the top, but you have a better opportunity of doing so. And I just, just being grateful for the things that are in your life, the people that are in your life, and not taking that for granted. I've gotten to the point now where sometimes when I walk around in my house, I just say, "Thank you, God," because I know it could be very different. In fact, I know in my life it has been different. I know what it feels like to, have, you got $50 and your light bill and your gas bill are both overdue, and you send them both $25 and pray that, they're going to say that's enough and they don't cut your stuff off, right? I know what that's like, and I know that there are people who are living like that. Um, you know, and not by choice, I'm sure. But it's just, something that's happening in their life at the time. Hopefully it's just a period of time. But, just to be a little bit more cognizant of the blessings that you have, the things that you get to do that others may not be able to do at the time.
I like that. So we're not saying to focus on the blessings and the things that are positive in your space to hide the bad things that are going on in the world. We're saying to be appreciative, to be grateful in spite of the things that are going on in the world. Because those things are still going on. There's still things that we as good human beings should be doing to, help our fellow man, and to do that, we have to acknowledge some of the negativity is out there. But in spite of that negativity, we're not going to diminish the value of what's happening to this other person or these other people or whoever it may be. In spite of those things, we can still be grateful. I like how you're coming at that.
Yeah, and I think too, being a responsible human and maybe pulling somebody aside when somebody who has uh, negative talk all the time, like, hey man, I understand that you're going through some stuff, we're all going through some stuff, whatever. Let's try to have some positivity, because at the end of the day, I mean, we all have stuff that we're dealing with, and if we can help each other, I may not be able to, you know give you money or give you this or give you that, some of the things that you may need. But there may be other avenues that I could help you. Or maybe I could come
Mhm.
help you mow your lawn on the weekend, or there's things that you can do, just being human. But being able to try to rein some folks in on some of that negativity. 'Cause like I said, it's contagious. And you may be having a really good day. You may be really happy and excited and grateful, and then all of a sudden, you're around a bunch of people who just kind of like, sap that energy, right? Um, and so, I know it's not an easy situation, because people are really personal about what they believe. And like I said earlier, I think sometimes that people don't even recognize that they have that trait at the moment, that they're in that
Mhm.
state at the moment. Um, but I think that, if you have a relationship that's close enough, you could have a conversation with someone and say, hey, and I've done that in the past. Hey man, you really got a lot of negativity going on. Hey, what's going on? Is there anything I can do to help? Like, um, I've had those kind of conversations with people. And honestly, people have had those conversations with me. I remember some conversations where some folks were getting with me like, hey man, what's going on with you? You seem like, you're a lot different today than you have been. Like, what's going on? And you can appreciate that, or you can, brush it off and continue to um, travel on the road that you're traveling.
That's interesting. You mentioned, having a tight relationship with someone and being willing to approach them in that conversation.
Mhm.
That sounds very similar to the concept of an accountability partner that we, refer to quite a bit here on the show. But I have a question for you though. How do you differentiate between complaining and venting? Is there a difference between those two things for you? Thinking in the context of a relationship you have with somebody as an accountability partner.
I think there is, because I think that, someone that you have a closer relationship with, you kind of know each other, right? We were talking, one of our episodes, we were talking about, growing up and how you just, know the boys on the block, right? You just knew each other. And I think that if someone is just venting about a certain situation, it hits different than, day in and day out. And every conversation is just something that is, um, you know, um, it's just something about what's happening in their life, or every situation that is brought up, or every conversation that is brought up with a good uh, uh, outlook, if you will, or talking about something good. Like I was talking about the trees, right? The trees were
Mhm.
beautiful, the flowers and all that, and then that whole conversation just gets like a buzzsaw came and cut the tree down. So I think that there's a difference in that type of scenario versus somebody just venting because maybe you're just venting because you're talking about the tires. Hey man, I just bought these tires last month and now I got these two tires that are bad, right? I mean, I think that that is more of a vent than it is necessarily a complaint, or um, just a gripe kind of thing.
Yeah. And from my perspective, if I'm venting, venting is like a vocalized, I interpret it as a vocalized release. We just talked about how we're surrounded by a lot of things. Negativity permeates us. It's just like you hold your hand in a bucket of water long enough, your fingers are going to get pruned up because, your skin is reacting to being submerged in the water. Similarly, if we're submerged in negativity around us, it's going to impact us some way or another. And venting to me seems like a vocalized way of releasing that. And once we've released it, it's like, okay, I got that out. Let me get down to business to start solving some problems to try to improve my situation or improve the situation. Whereas I interpret complaining, kind of as you've been using the word, to be like, I'm going to just bring all these things up, but I want to have a pity party and say, woe is me, and not shift into that mode of, okay, I've acknowledged what's going on. Now let me start trying to transition my way into something better.
Right. Yeah, I like how you put the venting. It's like taking a deep breath and letting it out, and it's like, okay, now let's go. Right.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The whole pity parties, and every day there's a scenario about what's wrong in the world, what's wrong in my life. Every day, every time, every conversation. And to me, that's not venting. That's just not recognizing what good you have in your life. And then, like I said earlier, you have a choice when these things happen. You can actually choose to be in that pit party, or you can choose to say, okay, how am I going to, turn the situation around? And, sure, it takes a little faith, and faith is not easy. But faith is really what I think helps you get to the other side, because you can't really see all the things that going to happen from this situation, but you can certainly believe that you'll have a positive outcome. And even despite how awful it may look, you can have a positive outcome. And I know it takes time to get to that point
Mhm.
because, again, I've been there, and whew, I know how hard it is, even though, that Bible verse, faith of a mustard seed, and a mustard seed is not that large, but it's difficult, especially when you have a lot on you, when you have a lot of stress on you, you have a lot going on.
Mhm.
It's difficult. And I'm just asking the audience to just consider the other option, right? The option that is converse to, uh, the pity party.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned how it's not necessarily an easy task. I would argue that it's something that takes practice. Very similar to how we've talked about habits in the past. Having this type of outlook, being able to understand and acknowledge that there is something wrong, that there's something going on, that there's negativity, there's something that is not right. Being able to acknowledge those things and still find a positive thing that you can latch on to and be grateful for so you don't get caught in the mire of all this negativity, that takes practice. That's not something that you can just flip a switch and I'll say that I'm going to start doing that tomorrow. So, I mean, are there some ways that people can start getting reps in? Or, I mean, what can we do to start moving the needle in that direction?
Well, I think um, it goes back to having good people around you first and foremost that are willing to have hard conversations with you, and that you're willing to have hard conversations with. You mentioned the accountability partner. We talk about that a lot on this podcast,
Mhm.
having accountability partners. I think that is is helpful. I also think, and you mentioned this earlier too, about what you take in. What are you letting in your space? How are you being, what are you letting affect you, whether it's the news or whether it's any other uh, stimuli that puts you in a mood that is converse to where you really would like to be. And, again, I think that may be something that you have to, as you say, practice, because if you've been doing a thing for a number of years, you're probably going to keep doing that thing until you recognize that that is something that negatively affects you or puts you in a state that you don't want to be in. And, listening to, positive uh, podcasts like the PSI Effect Podcast, listening to positive things like podcasts, listening to uplifting music, um, taking a walk in nature and taking in just how beautiful this world around you actually is. Spending time with people um, that you really love to be around, and that love being around you. I mean, I think that there are things that you can do, and I just mentioned a few, just the tip of the iceberg. But I think the important thing is first to recognize or have recognition that you're in such a state. And I think that's the piece that is probably the most difficult for some of us.
Yeah. And, I just can't state enough how much of a challenge it could be. Cause I mean, let's keep it real, Nuge. I could hear someone listening to this podcast right now able to poke holes in all the things that you just mentioned, saying, "Well, you said go for a walk. I blew out my knee. I can't walk right now." Or have an accountability partner. My job had me move across the country. I don't have any new friends. I'm just here for my job. I don't have anybody close by. I'm in the city. There's no nature to go out into. I mean, I could hear someone being able to try to counter all of those points you just made, and that just makes it a little bit harder to look for that gratitude. But you know what? You're breathing right now. Your heart's still beating. You opened your eyes this morning. There's some people that didn't get to do those things. So it's there's some positivity everywhere. We just have to be willing to go look for it and go get it. It's like, I tell my sons all the time, there's greatness in everyone. The determining factor is whether or not you have the grit to go after it and dig for it. And I think finding positivity is the same way. There's just like there's negativity everywhere, there's
Mhm.
positivity everywhere. And we just
Yes.
have to be willing to look for it and willing to try to see it in the same way that we see that negativity.
And I would challenge folks, if you're in a area, if you have been transferred across the country, around the world, and you don't have any friends, make a friend. You still have a choice. And to that person who can't go and walk in a park, maybe you can't walk in a park, but can you get to the porch? Can you open a window? Can you just look out and just, hear the birds chirping? Can you look out and see any flowers nearby that may be blooming? I mean, just it's not much, but I think that those little things can certainly impact, where you may be at that moment. And then, hopefully that leads you to a place where you can make a decision to do something positive, or maybe it will put you in a state of more of gratitude, or uh, just put you in a state of awareness that you have had a lot of negativity going on in your life. Um, I have no doubt that there are folks that can poke holes into what we talk about, and I think the same is true no matter what the conversation is. But I think that the effort has to be made if you recognize that you're in that state, and I think that trying to get out of that state is something that can really be impactful in your comeback. Because think about it, if you've had a setback and you don't have anything to, or you perceive that you don't have anything that is positive or that you can be grateful for, then that setback is going to last a whole lot longer.
So the effort that you speak of, for me, what that translates to is that if if I want to be able to find gratitude, to show gratitude, to be grateful in the face of adversity, in the face of negativity, in the face of bad things happening, that effort really manifests, at least for me, it manifests as a willingness to be vulnerable. If we have to be vulnerable because there's all these things screaming at us like, hey, you're in danger, this bad thing is going to happen. And we have to be able to be vulnerable for a second and say, hey, this thing is snapping in my face right here, but you know what, I'm going to look away for a minute and acknowledge the fact that I woke up this morning and my family was good. I had breakfast this morning. There's so many other things that are positive, and again, it doesn't diminish what's happening over here, but the health that it gives me mentally to be able to just break away for it, be vulnerable, and just trust that this thing is not going to take me out while I take a moment to be grateful. Um, that's where the effort lies, and I think that's where the habit muscles have to be built up if we really want to be able to see progress in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's the practice, like you mentioned earlier. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen all the time. Right? It doesn't happen for me all the time. It really does not. But when I recognize that I'm in that state, then I can make choices to go a different way. It's not easy. It doesn't happen all the time. And like I said, just little things, I've gotten to a place where I just indiscriminately just say, thank you, God, for this house. Thank you, God, for whatever. Thank you, God, that the situation worked out for me. Thank you, God, that I have friends and family. Thank you, God, that I get to be in the space and have fellowship with Frankie and speak to an audience. Just when you recognize that you get to do these things, I think it helps you through some of the challenges that you have, as you say, over here. But I think you have to practice it, like you said before. I think you have to practice it, and I think you have to be, as we talked about in the habit episode, you have to be consistent with it.
Hmm?
and as you practice it, then the consistency comes. And the more that you start to think about the things that you are grateful for, the more that you think about the things that you get to do. And it just compounds. And before you know it, that little voice over there that's, doing all that gets smaller. And then when the big thing happens, you have enough, stock in the bank, or if you will, to help you push through that. Right. So anyway, it was just something that has been gnawing at me for the last few weeks. And I just wanted to be able to have a conversation and just hopefully remind people that no matter what is going on in your life today, there is something that you can latch a hold of and be grateful for. It's not going to change or diminish the situation that you're in or the challenge that you have, but it might make it a little bit easier to, just an easier pill to swallow. And so I just wanted to get that out because I just think that, that negative space that we live in sometimes, it affects, I think it affects a lot of things. It affects our health. It affects our personality. It affects our relationships.
Mhm.
It can just affect a lot of things. And, I want our audience to have a good life. I want our audience to have good relationships. And so I just wanted to put that reminder out there that, we do get sidetracked with the negativity, and we just need reasons to pull us up out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's mindset matters. Mindset matters. And a mindset that is anchored in positivity is going to be able to make more progress than a mindset that is anchored in negativity, in fear mongering, in, you know, uh, thinking that there's going to be, famine and shortage, just that anchor of negativity really is an anchor. It holds you in place. But if you can find a mindset or work towards a mindset that is rooted in positivity, that's going to make our journey, our rise, our ability to transition into that ignition state all that much more feasible as we navigate all the problems that we still have to deal with. But having a fresh canvas of a positive mindset makes it a little bit simpler to deal with.
And be vulnerable. Find a friend, find an accountability partner. Maybe it's your own partner at home, but be vulnerable, open up, share so that you can, find that state that you would much rather be in. Because I would much rather be in a grateful state than to be in a negative state of complaining all the time. Um, and like I said, I've been there. So I know what it's like. It's not pretty when you come out of it and you look back. It's not a pretty sight of where you came from. But thank God that you came from there, right? Thank God that you were able to step out of that. And it's a lifelong practice. It's not something that you're going to get today and tomorrow's going to be done. It's a lifelong
Right.
practice.
Right. Well,
So
I know I needed to practice that as we launched this podcast, or this particular episode today. You throw in that curveball saying we're not going to talk about what we had said we were going to talk about. I'm sitting here with all this negativity jumping on me, like, what is Nuge doing? What is going on? But I am grateful that I got to have this conversation because, this was laid on your heart, and I agree that this is an important topic, especially in lieu of what's going on in the world today and around us and in our homes and in our families, all the things that are going on. I think this is an important topic. So I'm grateful for you, brother. Thank you.
appreciate you too, Frankie. And so hopefully everyone got a little something out of this conversation. Would love to hear your feedback. Send us some comments and such in the social spaces that we can take a look at, and we do read the comments and answer the comments. And with that said, Frankie, let our audience know where they can find us.
Indeed, sir. So for all things PSI Effect Podcast, go to our website. This is psipod.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes, as well as all the different platforms where you can get our audio format. Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, all those places. So make sure you find it on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. You can also find us on YouTube if you want to see full video of our episodes. You can use our handle at This Is PSI Pod, and that is also our handle for Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at This Is PSI Pod. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out.
Awesome. Wow. Again, thank you, Franky. I really appreciate you. I'm glad that you're in this space with me. And thank you to the audience. Glad that you're tuned in. We look forward to seeing you back with us again. And until that time, just remember that setbacks are temporary and comebacks are legendary. Until next time, be brave and rise on purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PSI Effect Podcast. This show doesn't happen without you, and you can connect with us via Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit our website at thisispsipod.com and find us on YouTube and social media at This Is PSI Pod. That's at This Is PSI Pod. Until next time, remember, be brave and rise on purpose.